Do you have a driveway? Do you do above average mileage? Do you want to save money more than you want to have the latest car every 3 years? In which case, get an electric car. Hi, I'm Tom TXWeller and I'm doing a cost of ownership comparison of electric cars and petrol equivalents. There's a couple of assumptions being made in this video. The big one is that it assumes you are one of the majority of people in the UK with the ability to charge at home, as this allows you to use tariffs that give you dirt cheap rates overnight to charge your car with. If you don't have home charging, the average cost of charging is higher. You would be reliant upon public chargers, and often these are charged at rates of 12, 15, 20p per unit of electricity, which is far higher than home charging overnight on a cheap tariff would cost. There are a fair number of free public chargers, but since these aren't anywhere near as widely available as private driveways, it's hardly worth mentioning them here, but do check ZapMap or PlugShare or other charging point finding apps or websites to see what charging options are available near to you. The other reasonably big assumption that we're taking here is that you're doing at least average mileage. It is true that if you are a very low mileage driver, it is really hard to make a brand new electric vehicle work purely for financial reasons. There are, of course, lots of other reasons to drive an electric vehicle. Superior driving performance, the ability to charge at home without having to visit petrol stations, zero-emission driving with a lower overall environmental impact compared to fossil-fuel cars, reduced downtime for servicing, maintenance and waiting for parts, reduced brake dust emissions, reduced noise pollution, the ability to feel totally smug whilst driving around, the feeling of 100% torque from 0 RPM with no loss of power for gear changes, and so on. But we're looking at it from just a purely financial point of view. A significant consideration not covered in this video is depreciation, but I have good reason for omitting that in this video. Depreciation on the average electric car is already lower than the depreciation on the average combustion car, and this gap is only going to continue to get wider as electric becomes more desirable and petrol and diesel become less desirable. So by omitting it, I'm actually giving the petrol and diesel cars a bit of an unfair advantage against electric. And for any viewers who think that the batteries need replacing every 5 years at enormous cost, just no. Please go away and update your tired old anti-electric car arguments. You are way behind the times. Now in this comparison I've picked the Vauxhall Corsa. Now the difference in purchase price between the petrol Corsa and the electric Corsa is quite high. Again, this is another advantage I'm giving to petrol cars, since there are cheaper EVs available and there are examples of makes and model of car where the gap between the petrol and electric models is also smaller than it is with the petrol Vauxhall and the electric Vauxhall. When I bought my own electric car, there was only an £8,000 difference in purchase price between the electric and petrol in the same trim, but with over £2,000 per year difference in running costs. So my own break-even point is actually under 4 years. I would urge you to run your own calculations, but hopefully this video will show you that long-term ownership of electric cars is better for your wallet, particularly if you are an above average mileage driver. So let's jump in. With the help of a spreadsheet, here's one I prepped earlier, we're going to compare the cost of the cars. So we're going to spec up the petrol, we're going to spec up the Corsa and put the two starting values in here. We're going to work out the actual yearly costs of running each car, and then each one of these rows is going to add on those yearly costs, and we'll see the difference in the total cost of ownership in this column here. So let's get started. So with the petrol engine, choosing the most basic petrol engine, because we're going to try and make the petrol car as cheap as possible. In the cheapest trim level, we are at 16,415. So we're going to go ahead and put 16,415 in that column. So that's our starting price. So the electric, we are looking at, well, there's only one electric engine. It can only come in an automatic, and that is the lowest trim level, and that comes out at 28,315. So I'm going to go ahead and put 28,315 in that column. Now there is a total difference in purchase price of £11,900. Now at this point I'm just going to point out a couple of differences. First of all, the low-end engine on the petrol model has a 0 to 60 of 12.4 seconds. The electric motor, however, has a 0 to 60 of 7.6 seconds. So we've already given petrol the benefit of the doubt. We're assuming that we're okay with a slower car. Also the trim level, the petrol comes in an SE trim level, and the next step up is SE Nav. The electric comes in only the SE nav. You can't just have SE on its own, so it comes in a slightly higher spec as standard. So that gives the petrol another advantage at being even cheaper compared to the electric. So there's a couple of advantages there that the petrol has already had over the electric. There's a couple of assumptions there we're making. So we're going to look at the cost of running them. So the average mileage that a UK driver drives as of 2018 is 7,134 miles, so we're going to stick that in there, and then this is going to kind of calculate for us. So the petrol at absolute best is 53.6 miles per gallon. And we're going to look at petrol pump prices. So we know there's been a massive dip because of the COVID lockdown, and prices are starting to rise. It's tailing off a little bit at the moment, but prices are going to start to rise. Now I'm going to take a sensible kind of low point just before this bump here and say that average petrol price there 125 pence. That's not a terrible assumption to make. I know I said I was going to give petrol every benefit of the doubt and use this, but these are unprecedented times, and this is just ridiculous, this wholesale price, due to very low demand because of the lockdown. So I'm going to take this pre sort of January bump here, and I'm going to take that price there, 125. So fuel cost calculator, if we did 100 miles at 53.6 miles per gallon and we're paying £1.25 per litre, run the calculation, that's 10.6 pence per mile. So on the spreadsheet, in cost per mile, this is in pounds, so I'm going to do 0.106, which is 10.6 pence per mile. So doing average mileage, your yearly costs just in fuel would be £756.20. The vehicle excise duty due on the petrol model is £175. I looked this up earlier. I should probably double check it for the purposes of this video to make sure it's absolutely thorough, but I'm just going to go with 175 for now. That's what I checked. Now, servicing costs, again, we're going to go back to Vauxhall's website, and they actually have, for cars under 10 months old, which presumably also includes brand new ones, £19 a month for petrol and £15 a month for electric. Now multiply those by 12. 19 times 12, I've got a calculator on my other screen, it's £228. And what is it for electric? It's £15 a month. 15 times 12, probably could have done that in my head, 180. So there's a difference in service price there. Okay, we know that's zero. I think that's zeroed out. Yep. Now let's have a look at electric. We're looking at an independent website that gives a real range, not the Vauxhall quoted range of whatever it is, 200 and something miles, 201 miles, something like that. I don't want to navigate off this page because I'll lose it, but they reckon 200 miles. But this website gives a real range with a little star of 170. And you can see there's various different mileages you can get. Very cold weather, highway speeds, you only get 120 miles. But then city and mild weather you get more. The official range of the car I think is 200. And it's 20 something last time I checked. But let's go with 170, which is more than 10% off that. It's about 15% less than the official range. Whereas on the petrol, we're going to go with the absolute best of 53.6 as calculated. Now, at 170 miles real range with a 45 kilowatt hour battery, if we divide 170 divided by 45, 170 divided by 45, we get an efficiency of 3.7777777 miles per kilowatt hour, which is hopefully the same as this 260 watt hours per mile, if my maths is correct. So, at 3.77777 miles per kilowatt hour, if you're charging at home and you're on a tariff that gives you 5p per unit at night, 5 divided by 3.7777777 gives you a running cost of 1.32 pence per mile. So on my spreadsheet over here, I'm going to put in 0.01. Let's go 0.14. Let's round up. Give people the benefit of the doubt. So our fuel cost per year is just under £100. Compared to £750 in the petrol. We're also saving £175 in vehicle excise duty, and we're making a £48 saving on servicing, for a total yearly difference in running cost of £879.33. Now what's not included on here is insurance, but Many electric drivers have found that by going with a company like LV, other companies are available. Please do your own comparisons online. They're actually getting a better deal on their electric cars than they ever did on their fossil fuel cars. So the evidence is pointing towards the fact that actually in a lot of cases electric cars are cheaper to insure than fossil fuel cars. But again, for the benefit of the doubt for the petrol car in this example, let's just say that insurance cost is the same. So we've got a running cost difference of £879, and we can see that this table has updated. So by the end of year one, the original purchase price of the petrol at £16,415, adding on the £1,159.20 running costs, at the end of year one, the petrol Corsa has cost £17,574.20. Now, taking the £28,000, £315 electric Corsa and adding on the running cost and the servicing cost, and you get £28,594. So there's still a massive difference there. But every single year, slowly but surely, the total cost of ownership swings in favour of the electric vehicle. Now, the average age of a vehicle when it is scrapped is 14.9 years, and actually by the time we get to year 14, well actually technically it'll be halfway between year 13 and year 14, we reach the break-even point. Now, a lot of people say, who's going to keep a car for 14 years? Yeah, there's some truth in that. Most people don't keep that because their circumstances will change within that time. But please bear in mind that this is just average mileage, let alone above average. And it's in favour of the petrol car, assuming the best possible efficiency, whilst assuming a below manufacturer's quote for efficiency on the electric. And it assumes that vehicle excise duty is not going to go up, and it assumes that fuel cost is just going to return to the pre-COVID levels and not go up any further. And the electric car will still eventually win if you keep it long enough and you're doing average mileage. Now, let's just tinker with these numbers a little bit. So we're going to go back to the drawing board. Let's move this out of the way. So, first of all, let's change the engine. Hopefully this page hasn't timed out. Just thinking about it. We're going to change the engine. Even the top spec engine of the two engines still only has a 0 to 60 of 10.2. Let's also increase the trim level to SE nav so it matches the trim level of the electric. Now we're actually at an initial purchase price of $17,995. So if we go back over here and we go into here and we do $17,995, suddenly the break-even point is now less than 12 years. Now let's also go slightly more accurate on here and go 0.132, which is a bit closer. So it's still only made a slight difference there. But do anything more, this is where the big difference comes in, do anything more than average mileage. If you do 10,000 miles a year, suddenly the break-even point drops dramatically. Now, let's say you're quite a bit above average. So let's say you do 15,000 miles a year, as a lot of people will do because they've got long commutes. Suddenly, the break-even point is now somewhere between year 6 and year 7. Now, somebody doing 20,000 miles a year is going to find that they break even in less than 5 years, just. Assuming the comparison is with the petrol version at its absolute best, and assuming that the petrol prices don't go above the pre-COVID levels, and assuming that vehicle excise duty doesn't go up, and assuming that servicing costs stay the same. So there's a lot of assumptions there. This car is actually probably more likely to get around 11 to 12p a mile. So if we have a look at 11 to 12p a mile, it is also possible to get cheaper than 1.3p a mile, because a lot of people... Oh, not what we want to. A lot of people will be using the Octopus Agile tariff, and they'll be using free charges. So if you've got access to that, then you'll get that break-even point even sooner. But even in this example, it will take less than 5 years at a slightly more sensible cost per mile. If you're doing 20,000 miles a year, you will reach that break-even point in less than 5 years. The more miles you do, the better. So if you're charging at home and you do average or above average mileage and you keep the car for long enough, you will see a return on that investment. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you are still here, then well done for persevering. If you're not here, then clearly you're not interested in learning the truth. Please do not take anything you've seen in this video as financial advice. I am in no way qualified to give financial advice. This is just here for reference. Please do your own calculations and bear in mind that in this example we've tried to give petrol the benefit of the doubt all the way through and just assumed it's going to get the absolute best miles per gallon that the manufacturer claims, and we've assumed a worse efficiency on the electric car according to an independent website that quotes a real world range rather than what the manufacturer says. So we've been harsh on the electric, we've been easy on the petrol. The electric still wins if you only do average mileage and you're charging at home and you keep the car for long enough. So use real world figures, you'll find that break-even point comes much sooner. Do above average mileage, that break-even point comes much sooner, and buy something that isn't a Corsa and you'll also find the break-even point comes much closer. For example, the high-end Kona petrol and the high-end Kona electric in similar spec are, I believe, a lot less than the £11,900 price difference that the petrol Corsa and the electric Corsa are in this video. So do the calculations. Ultimately, I hope you choose electric. It's better for all of us. Air quality, environment, all that jazz, and there's loads of non-financial reasons for an electric car. It's just a better car. It's worth having for that as well as for financial reasons. So hopefully you found this useful, and safe driving. Goodbye.